My name's Claire Lilly, former wife of Lcpl Alan Forcer. Alan was my son's father, my former husband, my friend. We lost Alan to suicide in 2020 after having been missing over a period of 3 days. It became my North Star, in a sense, if you like, in that I felt compelled to create a change based on my understanding as a colleague within the military for over 16 years, as a wife, as a mother, as a friend. It was very much woven into my fabric, and I felt that I could influence a change in terms of the unique mental health attributes that can present within a certain cohort of our armed forces community. And I wanted to put preventative measures and mechanisms in place via the Forcer protocol, utilising that conduit. So in May 2020, I reported Alan as missing and vulnerable with serious concerns for his welfare to the police. What was essentially a 20-minute conversation that consisted of me notifying them that he was a war veteran, that he'd been in and out of trauma therapy, that he had strong suicidal ideation, that he was drug and alcohol dependent, and that I was seriously concerned for his welfare. He was assessed as, it transpired from Alan's inquest, he was assessed as a medium risk. Alan was actually missing over a period of 3 days and was sadly found deceased in woodland, slumped beneath a tree with a ligature around his neck, with his dog Zeus, who'd laid loyally by his side for, we think, around 2 days. He didn't leave his side. The police were notified by a witness that Alan's car had been parked in a secluded lane for over 24 hours, at which point Alan did go to high risk. They proceeded to the location, taking with them their police dogs, and they actually heard Zeus's barks within the woodlands, so it was him that sort of notified them of his whereabouts. They put their police dogs away and ventured towards Zeus, where Alan was found deceased. Zeus, bless him, jumped up into the police officer's arms and he wanted to keep him. Zeus now lives with us, and it transpires actually that Alan had purchased Zeus with the intention of training him to be a therapy dog, and he has been the perfect therapy dog for Josh and I. And yeah, Alan had essentially chosen well. So transitioning out of the military, you're not only kind of leaving behind your, I would say, support network and connective kind of hive, if you like, but you're navigating a new landscape in terms of, you know, financial dependency, housing, medical connections, all of those kind of things. Really, those things can kind of be really overwhelming for someone that the military has been, you know, their life, or a large part of their life, and particularly if that's one of the reasons why they joined as well, you know, because there are people out there that have been on a bit of a wonky path, you know, maybe starting to go down the road of, you know, drugs and alcohol, and the curiosity that kind of ultimately comes with that pathway, and then, you know, join the military for a more stable, you know, way of life. And, you know, and some people really excel in that environment and go on to do amazing things, but other people that don't necessarily have a support network, you know, could possibly be going back to that lifestyle, right? So yeah, it's just being mindful of all of those dynamics really. And then obviously as well, it's really important to know that transitioning in and out of the military can be a really positive experience for many, but for some that's simply not the case. You know, the ONS statistics state that, you know, in 2021 we lost 253 veterans to suicide, which equates to roughly 4.8 human lives a week, 5 lives a week. and with drug and alcohol dependency being, you know, a large contributing factor, as you know, with housing and financial assistance and employment and all of those things being top of the list in terms of causing major concerns within that cohort. So it is important to remember with those statistics that we do clearly have a vulnerable cohort present within society, and as I say, the police, not just necessarily through the criminal justice system, but through vulnerabilities, may and will undoubtedly at some point come into contact with someone with you know, an armed forces history, or indeed is on leave, or you know, on R&R, transitioning out, those kind of things. So yeah, it's just important to be aware. The reason I say be aware is because it's a unique mental health genre that has more in place than other mental health genres, one could argue, with over 2,000 charities and entities geared to helping with all of those things that we've sort of discussed in place. You know, but it's understanding what that pathway looks like and how to navigate it, and that's, you know, in essence as well, part of the Forcer protocol is teaching what that is and educating people, not just within policing, but within, you know, within the council, within social services, within employers, within the ambulance service. You know, there's a whole host of areas that need that education on what that landscape looks like and how to utilise it. The implications could be catastrophic, like it was for our family, really. Alan was only ever a medium risk when I reported him missing, you know, and to me, you know, when I made the call to the police, you know, I was saying things like he's been in and out of trauma therapy, his funding for that has been cut due to service redesigns, he has strong suicidal ideation, he's battled with suicidal ideation, he's drug and alcohol dependent, which from a veteran trauma informed perspective was a very worrying conversation to be having, right? So, and it became clear within Alan's inquest that not just within policing that there was a gap within terms of connectivity and communication between all the other services and entities that were involved in his care, the community mental health team, his community psychiatric nurse, his drug and alcohol addiction worker, his probation officer, his Royal British Legion officer, probably more clued up than various other people within that landscape. The landscape itself and the amount of charities and organisations, it again is very fragmented and, you know, not very cohesive at all. And we just need to do, I believe that the Forcer protocol creates that connectivity and understanding and equips those officers with the tools to do their job effectively. And the third or fourth phase, if you like, of the Forcer protocol is for the police to do a professional referral into those services. The first part of the Forcer protocol is identifying whether that person has an armed forces history, whether that's the call handler taking the call and, you know, a loved one or a friend is reporting that person missing. They might not even know why that's relevant, right? So it's about that being written into policy throughout the forces. Then another aspect of the Forcer protocol is an online form that allows either the veteran themselves, their advocate, their carer or their family member can voluntarily submit information on an online form which gives the police quick, fast intel that could potentially take over an hour to gather that information, like their number plate, that their phone service provider, their medical history, their veteran-specific support workers, you know, an insight into any suicidal ideation that they might have, those kind of things, which could speed up the search and allow the police to allocate those resources effectively in order to achieve, you know, the best outcome for the veteran themselves and for their families, right? And for the police officers themselves. So it's kind of about all of those things, really. In terms of the allocation of police resources and the amount of missing phone calls that they have every single day, which is in their hundreds, right, region to region, you know, a cohort of those may potentially be someone with an armed forces history, it may be someone with Alzheimer's disease, it could be a missing child from care, right? So we need to equip the police forces to do their job effectively, and so I strongly urge you to sort of look at the form that's on Safe and Found online and have a look. There is something within the missing persons sector called the golden hour. The golden hour is essentially for someone that has suicidal ideation. That hour, every single second, every single minute is key. So if you can get onto the form and upload, you know, relevant information, you know, such as known places that they frequent, the type of medication that they're on, any known suicidal ideation, their car registration, their bank details, not their bank provider, should I say, you know, that they're all things that could, and there's a series of other questions as well within that form that could hasten that search and allow the police to allocate their resources effectively. And it could be the difference between a medium risk and a high risk as well, and how seriously, if you like, or how accurately that missing person is assessed for the best possible outcome.